Everything burned. The gold never did. Subscribe if you want more dark stories about ancient artifacts, forgotten objects, and the strange events that follow them. These are not myths meant to scare children. They're the remnants of things that should not have survived. When the fire was finally extinguished, the house no longer looked like a place where anyone had ever lived. The roof had collapsed inward, the walls were scorched black, and the air inside carried the heavy, bitter smell that only comes after something has been completely consumed. Furniture had melted into the floor, wood had turned to powder, and every personal object that once gave the home meaning had been erased beyond recognition. At first, it seemed obvious that nothing had survived. During the cleanup, while debris was being cleared for what had once been the bedroom, someone noticed a faint reflection beneath a layer of ash. It was subtle, almost easy to miss, but it didn't belong among the broken glass and burned timber. When the ash was brushed aside, a pair of gold earrings was revealed, resting where the floorboards had collapsed. They were old, heavy, and unmistakably handmade. Thick loops of dull gold, imperfect in shape, without gemstones or ornamentation. Jewelry like this did not belong to any modern collection. What made them unsettling, however, was not their age, but their condition. They showed no signs of heat damage. The gold had not warped, darkened, or softened. When picked up, they were cool, as though they had been shielded from the fire entirely. The woman who owned the house decided to keep them. At the time, she saw them as a strange kind of comfort, something beautiful that had survived when everything else had been lost. She cleaned the ash from them and placed them in a small wooden jewelry box on her dresser, thinking little more of it. For a while, nothing happened. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to a sense of normality. Then, without warning, a fire broke out in the garage. It was contained quickly, but the cause was never clearly identified. Investigators suggested an electrical issue, though no damaged wiring was found. The incident was dismissed as bad luck. The earrings, stored safely in the bedroom, were completely unaffected. Not long after, the woman moved to a new house, hoping to leave the memory of fire behind her. She brought the earrings with her, wrapping them carefully and placing them in a drawer she rarely opened. The new home felt safe, stable, untouched by the past. 3 months later, smoke filled the kitchen in the middle of the night. Flames spread along the cabinets before being extinguished. Once again, the damage was limited, and once again, no clear explanation was found. The earrings were still exactly where she had left them. That was when she began to feel uneasy. She gave the earrings to a relative, half-jokingly suggesting that maybe they brought bad luck with them. The relative placed them in a safe, assuming the stories were exaggerations born from stress and coincidence. 2 weeks later, a fire tore through the apartment building. The flames never reached the safe, but the floor below was destroyed. When the safe was opened afterward, the earrings were not inside. They were found resting neatly on top of it. From that point on, the earrings changed hands repeatedly. An antique dealer took possession of them, dismissing the rumors as superstition. Shortly afterward, a fire damaged the neighboring shop. His own store remained standing, but when he returned the next morning, the earrings were sitting on the counter, exactly where he had not placed them. Every home that stored the earrings experienced a fire sooner or later. Sometimes it was small, sometimes devastating, but it was always enough to leave a mark. And every time, the earrings were found untouched, as though the flames had deliberately avoided them. Stories began to form around them. Some claimed the earrings had been taken from a woman who had died in a house fire generations earlier. Others believed they were created as a charm against flames, protecting the wearer at the cost of everything around them. There were whispers of old practices, of gold bound not to resist fire, but to endure it. No one could confirm any of it. The last known owner refused to display or wear the earrings. He locked them inside a metal box and stored them in a warehouse used only for storage. When the warehouse burned down months later, The fire was so intense that steel beams bent and the roof collapsed entirely. Days later, investigators searched through the ruins and found the lockbox cracked open by heat. Inside, the earrings were still there, cold, unmarked, unchanged. After that, the earrings disappeared from records entirely. No sales, no collections, no photographs that could be verified. Yet in fire reports, insurance claims, and quiet conversations between people who had survived unexplained blazes, the same detail continued to surface. Gold found in the ashes, untouched, waiting. After the warehouse fire, no one officially claimed the earrings. They were listed in the investigation report as recovered personal property, then quietly removed from inventory. No explanation was given for where they were sent, and no one involved seemed interested in asking. It was as if the object itself had begun to slip through the cracks of documentation, leaving only second-hand accounts behind. Still, the stories did not stop. A few months later, a fire inspector in another city mentioned something strange during a routine debrief. While examining the remains of a burned townhouse, he had noticed a pair of gold earrings resting on a concrete step outside the building. They had not been reported missing, and no resident claimed ownership. What caught his attention was that the earrings were clean, untouched by soot, despite everything around them being coated in ash. He did not connect the detail to anything at the time. Later, an insurance adjuster described a similar discovery after a late-night apartment fire. Among the debris piled outside the building, firefighters had found a small metal box that had clearly been exposed to extreme heat. Inside it was nothing but ash, except for two gold earrings resting side by side as if carefully placed. No ver marks, no deformación. The adjuster remembered the detail because one of the firefighters had joked that the gold looked newer than the building. As these accounts accumulated, a pattern began to emerge. The earrings were never found at the center of the fire. They were discovered at edges, thresholds, or places of transition, doorways, steps, windowsills, always close enough to the destruction to be associated with it, but never consumed by it. People who encountered them described a similar reaction, a sense of unease that was difficult to explain. Not fear exactly, but the feeling that the earrings did not belong where they were found, and that moving them was a mistake. Those who did move them rarely kept them for long. One woman, who claimed to have found the earrings after a small electrical fire in her apartment, said she brought them home with the intention of selling them. That night, she dreamed of heat pressing in from all sides, not burning her, but surrounding her, tightening like a closing circle. She woke with the smell of smoke in her nose and found the earrings placed carefully on her kitchen counter, even though she had left them inside her bag. 2 days later, a fire broke out in the apartment below hers. Another account came from a man who believed the earrings were nothing more than an unusual coincidence. He stored them in a fireproof case, confident that logic would eventually explain everything. Weeks passed without incident, and he began to relax. Then a small fire started in the hallway of his building. It was contained quickly, causing little damage, but when he returned to his apartment, the fireproof case was open. The earrings were gone. They were later found on the floor just outside his front door. No signs of forced entry. No explanation. What disturbed people most was not the destruction, but the restraint. The fires never seemed random. They were never immediate. They arrived slowly, almost patiently, as if waiting for the right moment. And once the earrings were removed from a place, the incidents stopped. It led some to believe that the earrings were not causing the fires, but following them. That they were drawn to places where flames would soon exist, appearing there ahead of time, untouched, as silent witnesses to what was coming. Others believed the opposite, that the fires were inevitable wherever the earrings remained too long. By the time these theories began to circulate, the earrings were already moving again, leaving behind only scorched buildings and stories no one wanted to officially record. As more accounts surfaced, a strange consistency revealed itself in the details people usually ignored. The fires were never explosive, never chaotic in the way accidents often are. They behaved with a kind of restraint, spreading just far enough to destroy, but never far enough to erase everything. It was as if something was being taken, measured, and then deliberately left behind. Fire investigators began to notice it, even if they never said it out loud. Some scenes felt staged, not by human hands, but by circumstance itself. Burn patterns that made no sense. Objects reduced to ash beside others that remained untouched. And, occasionally, those same gold earrings resting quietly where destruction had ended. One retired firefighter later admitted that he had seen them twice in his career. The first time, he thought nothing of it. The second time, years later, and in a different city, he recognized them immediately. The same thickness of gold, the same uneven curve, the same dull surface that reflected light without ever seeming bright. He said the fires felt wrong when the earrings were present, quieter, as though the building had already accepted what was happening. In one case, the earrings were discovered inside a burned-out bedroom, placed carefully on a windowsill where the glass had shattered outward. Everything else in the room was gone. Curtains, mattress, wooden frame. Nothing remained but blackened stone and twisted metal. Yet the earrings sat there, clean, almost polished, catching the early morning light. No one claimed them. They were left behind. Not every fire ended with their discovery, but every confirmed sighting of the earrings ended the same way. The object would appear, survive, and then vanish before it could be formally cataloged. Evidence rooms lost track of them. Photographs came out blurred or corrupted. Written descriptions conflicted, as though memory itself resisted fixing their image too precisely. People who try to keep the earrings often described the same subtle pressure, a growing discomfort that had nothing to do with heat, a feeling that something in the house was unfinished, that the walls were holding their breath. Some reported smelling smoke when there was none. Others felt an urge to check doors and windows repeatedly, especially at night. Those who ignored the feeling always paid attention later. A collector once claimed that the earrings had appeared on his doorstep after a small fire damaged a nearby building. He brought them inside, curious but unconcerned. Over the next few weeks, he noticed small changes. Light fixtures flickered, smoke alarms triggered without cause. The air in his apartment felt dry and heavy, as if the moisture had been drawn out of it. He returned the earrings to where he had found them. The fire alarm stopped. This led to a final theory, one that was never published but passed quietly among those who had encountered the artifact more than once. The earrings were not relics of a single tragedy, but instruments of repetition. Objects bound to fire not as victims, but as markers. They did not burn because they were never meant to. They were meant to remain. Wherever they appeared, fire would follow, or had already been promised. And once the fire fulfilled its role, the earrings moved on, leaving behind ruins, reports, and survivors who could never fully explain what they had seen. By the time the last unofficial sighting was reported, the earrings had stopped appearing in homes altogether. They began showing up closer to places already marked by flame. Old buildings scheduled for demolition. Abandoned houses with faulty wiring. Structures that felt temporary, as though their destruction had already been decided. And each time, the pattern held. Everything burned. The gold never did. The last time the earrings were mentioned, there was no fire report attached to the account. A demolition crew working on an abandoned row of houses discovered them early one morning, resting on a concrete step in front of a building scheduled to be torn down later that week. The structure had no power, no residents, and no recorded incidents. There was nothing that should have drawn the earrings there. They were simply waiting. The foreman picked them up briefly, turning them over in his palm, and described feeling an immediate urge to put them back down. He later said it felt wrong to carry them away, as if doing so would shift something that had already been decided. He left them on the step and ordered his crew to continue work. 2 nights later, the building caught fire. It burned quickly, cleanly, as if it had been prepared in advance. When the flames died down and the site was inspected, the earrings were found once again, resting in the open where ash and debris had collected around them. They showed no signs of damage, no trace of heat, no history of what had just occurred. After that, there were no more confirmed sightings, no photographs that could be traced, no reports that mentioned gold among the ruins, no objects left behind to examine. Some believe the earrings were finally consumed, that time and repetition had caught up with them. Others think they completed whatever cycle they were bound to, and simply stopped appearing once there was nothing left to mark. But among those who study fire damage long enough, there is a quieter belief that the earrings still exist, not as something to be owned or collected, but as something that arrives before destruction, untouched by it, waiting patiently for the moment when everything else is reduced to ash. And when that happens, the fire ends. The gold remains,